The roar of the motorcycles filled the quiet morning air as a convoy of leather-clad bikers pulled into a small gas station on the edge of a dusty highway. The smell of gasoline mixed with the scent of desert wind, and among the chrome and thunder, a single silver sedan sat parked beside the pumps. Inside the car sat a woman, eyes tired, face pale, hands trembling slightly as she counted the few crumpled bills in her lap. Her name was Mia Turner, a single mother doing her best to stay strong in a world that kept knocking her down. She wasn't supposed to be there that morning. In fact, she had planned to take a different route entirely, but her old car had other ideas, sputtering and dying just as the fuel gauge hit empty. When she saw the bikers roll in, her heart raced, not from fear, though their tattoos and worn leather vests might intimidate others, but from desperation, because in her hand, tucked between trembling fingers, was a note. A note she had written the night before, after crying herself to sleep beside her 8-year-old son, Ethan, who was in the hospital battling a rare form of leukemia. The paper was small, creased from being folded too many times, and stained where tears had fallen. On it, she had written words she never thought she'd give to a stranger. But life had pushed her to a place where pride no longer mattered. Only her son did. Before we go deeper into Mia's heartbreaking journey and what that biker did next, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of helping others when they least expect it. Because sometimes, a single act of compassion can rewrite an entire life story. Mia stepped out of her car, her heart pounding in her chest. One of the bikers, a tall man with a gray beard and kind eyes behind his intimidating look, was filling up his black Harley. His name patch read Rick, Road Captain. His vest was covered in pins and patches, each one, telling a story of miles ridden and battles fought, both on the road and in life. Mia hesitated for a moment, gripping the note in her hand. Her voice trembled as she called out to him, but he didn't hear her over the rumble of the engines. She took a step closer, then another, until she stood beside him. When he turned toward her, she froze. The words she had practiced all night vanished. Rick raised an eyebrow, waiting patiently, his tattooed hand still holding the gas nozzle. Finally, without saying a word, she extended the note toward him through her car window. He blinked in surprise, glancing at the paper, then at her tear-streaked face. Something in her eyes, that quiet mixture of fear, exhaustion, and hope, made him take it gently from her hand. She whispered softly, almost too low to hear, "Please, just read it." Then she drove off, leaving the confused biker standing by his Harley, holding that fragile piece of paper as the dust from her car swirled around him. Rick unfolded the note with care. The handwriting was shaky but neat, the words simple but powerful. It read, "To whoever finds this, I don't know where else to turn. My name is Mia. My son, Ethan, is 8 years old. He's in St. Mary's Hospital fighting leukemia. We've lost our home, my job, and almost everything else. I stopped here because I can't afford gas to get to him. If you're reading this, please don't feel sorry for me. Just pray for my boy. I just need to get to him before visiting hours end." Rick stood frozen, his throat tightening as he read the words again. Around him, the noise of the other bikers laughing and talking faded into silence. He stared at the note for a long moment, then clenched it gently in his hand. "Hey, Prez," he called out to the man fueling the next bike over. "Tony, the club president, you gotta see this." Tony took the note, read it, and let out a long breath. Without a word, he turned toward the rest of the crew. "Mount up, boys," he said in a voice filled with purpose. "We got a ride to take." Within minutes, the roar of engines filled the air again, not for a joyride, not for a rally, but for something far more important. Mia had made it only a few miles down the road before her gas lights started flashing. She pulled over near a quiet stretch of highway, hands gripping the steering wheel as tears streamed down her face. She was out of options. She whispered a prayer, asking for strength, for a miracle, even though she'd stopped believing in them a long time ago. Then, in the distance, she heard it, the thunder of engines approaching fast. She looked up through her tear-blurred eyes and saw a line of motorcycles slowing down beside her car. Her breath caught as she recognized the gray-bearded biker from the gas station leading the pack. Rick dismounted his Harley and walked toward her with a soft, reassuring smile. "You forgot something," he said, holding up the note. She looked at him in confusion until she saw what was in his other hand, a gas can. One by one, the bikers started unloading supplies, a full tank of fuel, an envelope with cash, and even a teddy bear one of them had picked up at the station store. Mia covered her mouth, overwhelmed by the sight. Rick looked at her and said, "We read your note. We're not letting you do this alone." Mia tried to speak, but no words came out. Her heart was breaking and healing all at once. As they filled her tank, Tony handed her a folded wad of bills. "Every dollar from the guys," he said. "Get your boy whatever he needs." Mia shook her head, crying, "I can't take this." "Yes, you can," Tony interrupted gently. "We've all been through hard times. Now it's your turn to have people ride beside you." She finally broke down, sobbing into her hands as Rick gently placed the teddy bear in her passenger seat. The bikers stood around her silently, rough men with tattoos and scars, yet in that moment they were the softest souls on earth. They didn't just give her gas and money. They gave her something she hadn't felt in months: hope. When Mia arrived at St. Mary's Hospital later that afternoon, she found Ethan sitting up in bed, pale but smiling when he saw her. "Mom, you made it!" he exclaimed, his small arms wrapping tightly around her neck. Behind her, the hospital staff and visitors turned their heads as a group of leather-clad bikers walked into the children's ward, carrying balloons, snacks, and small toys. The nurses looked startled at first, but when they saw the tenderness in the bikers' eyes, their surprise turned to smiles. Rick walked up to Ethan's bedside and said softly, "Hey, little man, we heard you're one tough fighter." Ethan grinned. "Are you a real biker?" Rick chuckled. "Sure am. And you know what? You're part of our crew now." The boy's eyes lit up brighter than they had in weeks. That evening, the entire biker club, the Iron Prowlers, gathered outside the hospital, lining up their bikes. They revved their engines one by one, each roar echoing as a promise of strength for a little boy fighting his hardest battle. The hospital windows filled with faces of kids watching in awe, waving and cheering. Mia stood beside Rick, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Rick looked at her, his voice low but steady. "You already did, Mia. You reminded us why we ride, not for power, not for pride, but for purpose." In the following weeks, the club organized fundraisers, charity rides, and hospital visits for Ethan. They spread the word across social media, and soon people from all over began donating to help pay for his treatments. Within a month, Mia's story had gone viral. A single mother's note to a stranger had turned into a movement of compassion that spanned across the country. Ethan's condition began to improve. The doctors called it medical progress. Mia called it a miracle on two wheels. Months later, on a bright spring morning, the hospital held a small event to thank the bikers and donors who had supported their patients. Ethan, now stronger and smiling, ran across the courtyard with his teddy bear in hand. He leaped into Rick's arms, shouting, "I told you I'd beat it." Rick laughed, his eyes misty. "You sure did, champ. You're the toughest little rider we've ever met." Mia stood nearby, watching her son laugh again, really laugh for the first time in so long. She felt the weight of all her fears slowly lifting, replaced by something she had almost forgotten how to feel: peace. When the crowd clapped, Rick turned to the club and raised his hand. "This is what it's all about," he said. "Sometimes one person's cry for help can become a whole brotherhood's mission." As the sun began to set, Mia stood beside her car, the same silver sedan that had broken down months ago. But this time, she wasn't alone. The Iron Prowlers surrounded her, their engines rumbling softly like a heartbeat of unity. She looked at Rick and said, "I never thought strangers could care this much." He smiled gently. "We stopped being strangers the moment you slipped me that note." The bikers mounted their bikes, and as they rode off into the golden light, Mia held Ethan close and whispered, "Kindness comes in leather jackets sometimes." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, because the world needs more reminders that compassion still exists in unexpected places. Comment below, what would you have done if you were in Mia's place that day? And remember, no act of kindness is ever too small. Sometimes, the smallest gesture, a note, a smile, or a helping hand, can change someone's entire world.